So I think we are now on air. Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for attending this webinar, which will show you how to implement risk-based thinking according to ISO 9001. My name is Pereira da Cruz, and I'm an author at 𝗪𝗲𝗴𝗶𝘀. I do quite a lot of ISO 9001 consulting and training, but I also audit as lead auditor. So today, I'm going to share with you my thoughts about risk-based thinking, risk management. My presentation will last approximately 40 minutes, after which we'll do the 20-minute question and answer session. So if you would like to ask a question, you don't have to wait for the Q&A session. You can ask it during my presentation by clicking the Q&A icon and writing your question. Of course, in the Q&A session, I also answer all of your remaining questions. And if you click on the chat icon, you can download right away a PDF file with the handout of this presentation and check the links to articles that will be mentioned during the presentation. Okay, so ISO 9001 requires organizations to manage risks that could affect product and service quality, customer satisfaction, and business continuity. In this webinar, we explain how to apply risk-based thinking using practical steps to determine, evaluate, and mitigate risk in processes, products, and services. Products, and services. So this webinar is dedicated to quality managers, internal auditors, consultants, and professionals responsible for implementing or maintaining an ISO 9001 QMS, quality management system. Now, let's go to the agenda. So this is our agenda for today. We'll start talking about risk definition. I know you don't like definitions, but definitions are good foundations for talking about risk. Then we'll speak about a risk-based thinking process and where risk appears in ISO 9001. Then we'll give some examples of risk-based thinking application, so in context, related with intended outcomes, related with products and services, and with processes. And then we have documenting and evidencing the risk-based thinking is also considered. And finally, we'll present the main challenges with risk management according to the input you gave me in your emails before this webinar. Okay, now let's start with a case, a real life example. So let's bring the topic to life with a real world example using a simple and relatable scenario. Okay, so imagine we're working with a small or medium-sized manufacturing company, a typical case in many industries. They rely on a few key suppliers to deliver critical components just in time. Okay, now let's start with an objective, an intended result. Okay, so the manufacturing company wants to deliver on time. And this is very, very important. Determining risks is not the output of a free brainstorming session. It's done around an objective, around an intended result, or around an unintended consequence, okay? Something that we want to avoid or something that we want to achieve. So start always with an objective that you want to achieve or something that you want to avoid. The team, so in the company, determines a clear risk, supplier delays. This could be due to transport issues, capacity limits, or even geopolitical events. And you know, in a lean operation, even a short delay can stop production. So they determine the risk. Now they will evaluate, they will assess the risk. The impact is high. They consider the impact is high. So a delay could stop production, delay deliveries to customers, and hurt reputation. But the likelihood they consider medium. So it doesn't happen often. It's not impossible either. So, and to mitigate this risk, they decide to qualify a secondary supplier. That way, if the primary one fails to deliver, they have a fallback ready. And this reduces the risk without significantly increasing operational complexity. Now, finally, the risk doesn't just go into a drawer. No, it's tracked, it's monitored. So every month during the procurement meetings, they evaluate the team review, they review the supplier performance and the readiness of the backup supplier. So this ensures that the mitigation remains effective over time. And this example shows how risk-based thinking can be simple, pragmatic, and integrated into daily management practices, even in a small company. And risk management is not about the past, it's about the future, what comes next, okay? Now, just to say to Kati, yes, we'll send you the slides after the webinar, okay? We'll send you the slides after the webinar, but I think you can download it now. Okay, so now the definition, okay? So when discussing risks and opportunities, we should remember and explicitly mention expected results. ISO 9000, 2015 defines risks as the effect of uncertainty, okay? So uncertainty is simply something we are uncertain about. There is doubt and we are unsure. Then in a note in that standard 9000 states that an effect deviates from the expected positive or negative. So due to uncertainty, there might be a positive or negative deviation from the expected or intended results. And by the way, I prefer the ISO 31000 definition of risk. They define risk as the effect of uncertainty on objectives. So we have an objective. This is our plan to achieve the objective, but then this is what can happen in reality, okay? Now, let me leave here with a link to an article that you can check later called How to Address Risks and Opportunities in ISO 9000, okay? So risk definition. Now, let's go into the risk-based thinking process, okay, based on the PDCA. So risk-based thinking should be ongoing. It can't be done once a year and considered adequate. No, it's something that we do ongoing, a continual doing it. So the best way to apply is through the PDCA cycle, okay, which the standard recommends. So first, you should define the scope of the risk-based thinking, okay? Since this standards focus on customer satisfaction and delivering a quality product or service, you must include all the processes and issues affecting those two. So what can contribute to affect our ability to achieve quality product or service and customer satisfaction. And don't forget that ISO 9001 mentions the ability of the QMS to achieve its intended results. Okay, we have also here the quality objectives, okay, the main objectives of the management system. So we are still in the plan phase, and the next step is to select the appropriate methodology. So there are a lot of available methodologies, and there is no single methodology that will fit all organizations. We'll speak about some tools to use later. My advice is to do a little research and select the methodology according to the criteria that you find appropriate. And you don't need to use something complicated. No. Now, following that methodology, you determine the risks, okay? The next step is, of course, to conduct the risk evaluation. And the best way is to include relevant people from your organization and get the most relevant information and data needed for the evaluation. So risk evaluation is best done as a team effort, not a one-person exercise. And once you determine an acceptable risks, and remember, there is no universal objective way of evaluating risks and their tolerance, okay? Two different companies can look into the same risk, and some say that they can live with that risk, and others say that, no, we must minimize or we must mitigate this risk. So there's no universal criteria, okay? So it is up to each management team to decide what is intolerable risk. So you must create a plan to mitigate those risks. This can be done in the same way we perform preventive actions, okay? In the end, you need to do a follow-up to determine whether the actions for risk mitigation were effective and if the risk assessment methodology or scope should be changed, okay? So if there is a need for further action, you need to initiate corrective actions. So consider the non-conformities. So non-conformities in an organization, in your organization, complaints, devolutions, and lost customers as signs or warnings about the need to update the risk assessment or the risk evaluation. So you must look into that information and think, are they signaling that changes must be made? Now, one last remark. Don't worry too much about not being exhaustive, okay, enough in determining risks and opportunities. So if you look into this picture in the slide, it's an iterative cycle. So determined by calendar, for example, performance evaluation, or by event. So imagine your company receiving a complaint, okay? So a simple way of evaluating risks may be a matrix like this, okay, where we assess risk based on two dimensions, the probability of the event occurring, so low, medium, high, and the consequence or impact if it does occur, so low, medium, high. And the color coding helps us visualize the priority. So if it is green, it is an acceptable risk. We just need to monitor. If it is yellow, it's a moderate risk. We should consider action. So not necessarily mandatory, but is it necessary or not? It's a decision. And the orange one, okay, high risk, action required, okay? This matrix helps us prioritize actions to mitigate or eliminate significant risks before they impact our processes or outcomes of the QMS. So now this is for risks, now for opportunities, okay? So a simple way of evaluating opportunities may be something like this, okay? Where we evaluate the return, okay? Or potential benefit of the opportunity. So low, medium, high. We evaluate also the effort, okay, or resources needed to pursue it, okay, low, medium, high. Again, the color coding supports decision-making. Green means high effort and low return, so only pursue if strategic, okay? Yellow, worth exploring, analyze further. And orange, quick wins, act fast. Okay, so for example, this one here, a return high and effort low. Oh, this is really something to do right away. So this helps us focus not just on reducing threats, but also on capturing opportunities that can improve quality performance or customer satisfaction. Now, can you see the difference between risks and opportunities? With risks, something bad may happen if you don't do anything, okay? With opportunities, if you do something, you will make some effort and it's not sure that something good will happen. Okay, that's why we evaluate this return and the level of effort. Now, I leave here link for 3 articles. First one is diagram of 4 steps in ISO 9001 risk management. The other one is how to identify risk significance in ISO 9001. And the other one is how to identify risk controls in ISO 9001. You can check these articles later. Now, we have a question here from 𝗂𝗲𝗴𝗶. 𝗂𝗲𝗴𝗶 asked, is there a frequency to update the risk and opportunity register? So, and what constitutes an input to the risk and opportunity register? Now, ISO 9001 does not require a fixed updated frequency, okay, a fixed update frequency for the risk and opportunity register. Okay, so updates should be triggered by change, not by the calendar. Okay, so typical inputs include changes in context, changes in process or product changes, non-conformities, complaints, performance trends, audit results, management review decisions. So the register is effective when it reflects current reality and supports decisions. Okay, now let's continue. So still with the PDCA, so ISO 9001 mentions risks and opportunities in several clauses. Okay, I have this one, 5.1.1D, states that top management should promote this risk-based thinking. Clause 6.1 mentions risks and opportunities about the intended results of the overall QMS or undesirable or desirable consequences, considering context and interested parties. So clauses 4.1 and 4.2. Okay. Now, then comes clause 5.1.2. These are about mentions risks and opportunities about products and services. So what can go wrong with, for example, specifications or product use? Are there any improvement opportunities or opportunities to improve the product or service performance? Then comes clause 4.1F, mentions risks and opportunities in processes. Okay, so the QMS is a set of interrelated processes. Each process has intended results and can have undesirable consequences. So we will present here different techniques and different situations for these three kinds of risks. Clause 9.1.3, so regarding monitoring, mentions is about evaluating the effectiveness of actions to act on risks and opportunities. So we act to mitigate the risk or to take advantage of the opportunities. So are those actions effective? Yes or no? Clause 9.3.2, so about management review, mentions that the effectiveness of actions to deal with risks and opportunities should be evaluated at management reviews. And last clause, 10.2.1E, says that whenever a non-conformity occurs, we should consider the validity of the present risk assessment. So are there new risks, new evaluations of probability or in gravity or seriousness, impact? So we have risks and context at the organizational level. So as considering the organization as a whole, risks and products and services, and risks and processes. Now, I leave here a link, two links, okay, to articles that you can check later. The first one is, does ISO 9001 require a procedure for addressing risks and opportunities? And the other one is a free white paper, Basics of ISO 9001 Risk Management. Okay. Now, yes, the question that I have your question here. Yes, we will send the recording of the webinar. Okay. Now we have here a question from Renato. Renato asks, how can top management demonstrate risk-based thinking? That's 5.1.1D. What are sample activities or programs that it can implement? Now, under ISO 9001, top management demonstrates risk-based thinking by considering risks and opportunities when setting direction and making decisions, not by running a separate risk program. So when those decisions are embedded in the rest of the management system. So this is typically shown through strategic objectives aligned with risks, management reviews addressing trends and uncertainties, risk-informed resource allocation, and controlled change decisions. So the key evidence is that leadership decisions consistently reflect awareness of risk and impact, and this mindset is reinforced across the organization. Remembering some examples, we can, if you want, we can check those examples later. But another question is from Henry. Henry asked, ISO 9001 requires you to identify risk. However, doesn't seem to require us to act on risks as such. Why? So ISO 9001 deliberately, avoids requiring action on every determined risk because its intent is risk-based thinking, not risk elimination. So the standard requires organizations to determine relevant risks, and to risks and opportunities, and to plan proportionate actions, only where needed based on the evaluation. So integrating them into processes and evaluating their effectiveness. Choosing not to act on a risk can be a valid, justified decision, and this approach avoids bureaucracy and false precision, relying instead of managerial judgment to focus effort where it truly affects performance and customer satisfaction. And one last question with this slide is from SA. It says that at our manufacturing plant, everyone seems to think we only implement risk management at the organizational level, so top management. Does that fulfill the ISO requirements, or do we need to implement at department level, such as human resources, production, shipping? Okay, no, just at top management, just at the high-level organization is not enough, Top management level risk thinking alone does not meet the full intent of the ISO 9001. So it's only this yellow one in the slide, no, but we need the other. We need the risk and products and service, risks related with products and services, and risks related with processes. Now let's move to the next. Now, examples regarding the context, the risk and opportunities related with context and interested parties. So, clause 6.1. Asks us to determine risks and opportunities by understanding our organization's context, internal and external issues, and what relevant interested parties expect from our organization. But instead of jumping into random brainstorming, we're going to anchor our thinking in purpose, in objectives. So start with the intended result. Let's begin with the outcome, with an outcome that we want, that our organization wants. Something like, in this case, comply with product compliance obligations. So this sets the direction for our risk thinking. Again, it's not a free brainstorming. So we are not just listing problems. We're asking what could affect our ability to meet this particular intended result. Now, step 2, determine the issues that help or hinder. So let's go to the context, internal and external issues. So internally, we can think of something like this: lack of adequate resources for compliance. That's a weakness in our organization. The organization recognizes this weakness. And let's go to the external issue. Externally, emerging stringent product regulations globally. This is a threat. So we captured those into SWOT matrix, SWOT structure. And what I will show you in this slide is something like this. You play combinations of strengths with opportunities or threats, and combinations of weaknesses with opportunities or threats. So we combine SWOT elements to determine risks. So now what we do is look at what happens when threats and weaknesses combine in this example. So this specific combination points to a real risk. The risk is risk of non-compliance with product regulations. And we ask, is that particular risk relevant? So would a regulatory body or a customer consider it critical? Or, for example, for top management, they can consider this as critical because it's relevant for the reputation of the organization, for example. So we flag it as important. And now, because it's important, we need to determine actions. okay? This is where we move from determination to response. So for this risk, we might increase something like training or reinforce quality assurance headcount or invest in regulatory surveillance tool, for example. And then we need to, step 5, to evaluate effectiveness. How do we know if those actions worked? We evaluate the effectiveness by looking at fewer audit non-conformities, faster regulatory response times, improved compliance metrics, feedback from external audits or notified bodies, for example. Okay, so key takeaways. Let's wrap up this part of the session by summarizing the key points we've considered. First, always start with intended result. What are we trying to achieve? That's our anchor. In our example, it was comply with product compliance obligations. This gives us a purpose-driven lens for determining risks. We aren't in the competition to get the biggest list in the world of risks and opportunities. No, we want the very relevant risks and opportunities for our context and for our interested parties, okay, for our organization. Now, second, don't begin with free-form brainstorming. Instead, use structure. Organize your thinking using a SWOT framework, as I show. Organize your thinking using a SWOT framework, internal strengths and weaknesses, external opportunities and threats. So always in the context of the intended result, okay? So third, use combinations of issues to determine meaningful risks and opportunities. For instance, a weakness like under-resourced compliance combined with a threat like tighter global regulations helps reveal a real risk, non-compliance with product laws. Fourth, prioritize. So ask, is this risk relevant, significant? So would our customers, our regulators, any relevant interested party consider this relevant? If the answer is yes, then it deserves attention. And finally, taking action is only half of the job. We must also evaluate effectiveness. That means asking, did the risk level go down? Are the outcomes improving? Are compliance targets being met? That's how we close the gap and evaluate the effectiveness of those actions regarding the risks and opportunities. Don't forget this one, okay? Start with outcomes, not with lists. Ivar asked how to avoid excessive risk assessment or overestimation. Okay, so ISO 9001 doesn't require exhaustive risk analysis. Okay, so to avoid overestimation, focus only on risks that affect conformity and customer satisfaction and match the level of analysis to the potential impact. Okay, so risk-based thinking should be embedded in planning and decisions, not treated as a standalone exercise. We'll see this particularly in exercise in the example about risks and processes. Okay, so once risks are understood well enough to act, further analysis adds little value. Okay, so yeah, so we don't need to use complex techniques or complex methods. Yeah. So let's see now opportunities. Opportunities are positive deviations from expected results. For example, you are doing the context analysis in your organization. So, for example, a clinic, okay, and you think demographic evolution aligns with a rise in chronic diseases, okay, in the population, general population. Also, another external issue is more and more people are used to working and interacting with online screens. So this can be seen as external issues an organization can take advantage, can exploit, okay? So working together with expertise, something internal, a strength of this particular company, expertise in medicine and brand notoriety, an organization can work to serve more customers without investing in facilities through telemedicine. Okay, so here an opportunity that will manifest or will become true if the organization does something. Okay, so or in a world with more another example would be in a world with more uncertainty with demand, so where customers delay decision until the last moment, an organization can use spare capacity or partner with others to offer a more flexible service with a reduced time to serve. Another opportunity. And by the way, look at this to distinguish. We use the word opportunities for two different things. Okay, we have opportunities like that one in demographic evolution arising from the context analysis, potential events or trends that the organization cannot control. Okay, with opportunities arising from clause 6.1 here, serve more customers through telemedicine. An opportunity that will only manifest if the company makes some effort, okay? So, and that's why we need to evaluate. Is it worth the effort? What could the return be? Okay? And again, and by the way, another thing. So I put there demographic evolution as an opportunity. But for example, for a toy manufacturing company, okay, they would say, oh, less and less kids, more and more older people. That's a threat to our organization. So this particular issue, demographic evolution, is not intrinsically opportunity or threat. That depends on your particular organization. Okay, on your strategy, on what are your products and services. What is your strategy? Okay, now. Let's see now an example with products and services. Okay, so customer complaints, devolutions are signs of risks with your products and services. For example, your quality control activities can detect non-conformities. Again, so this is in a way our manifestation of risks that became reality. Okay. So, and the organization should consider and care about, at least to reduce, for example, the frequency. Okay, lost customers are another sign of risks with the products and services that should be considered. So, whatever your organization can do to improve its competitive advantage, okay, is a potential source of opportunities that can be used. So, for example, an IT service provider offers cloud storage solutions to business of many sizes, okay? And what is relevant is ensuring consistent data retrieval speeds is critical for customer satisfaction and competitiveness in cloud storage market, okay? So consistent data retrieval speeds. So an expected result for a service considered relevant by users is this one. High data retrieval speed within specification limits. But there is a risk. A risk is this company use different data centers that makes data retrieval speed variable, okay? Or increases variability and makes so variability much wider. But the organization can look at this as an opportunity. Okay, separate high-speed data retrieval services and sell them at premium price for performance-sensitive clients. So again, risk and opportunity, it's not intrinsic, depends on your point of view, on your strategy. Now, your organization should evaluate risks and opportunities and decide whether to act and what to do. And remember, risk-based thinking is never about reacting, okay, about the past, but preparing for the future, okay? Now, okay, I like this topic about risks and processes. So, when determining risks and opportunities around processes, I'm always trying new methods, okay, that can be seen as more natural, and effective by organizations. So I can use a brainstorming session. So think something like this. So we have a process. The process exists to deliver something as a purpose, as an objective. Okay, we can develop a brainstorming session around what helps or hinders the ability to achieve the purpose of the process. We can use, and it's very, very, very useful, I will show you, a flow chart. Okay. We can use failure mode and defect analysis. We can use hazard analysis and critical control points. We can use fault tree analysis, so different techniques that can be used to determine risks. And ask. So we ask what can go wrong or what can be improved in our organization. Yeah. So, sorry, I have here a link. Leave here a link for an article called "What is Failure Mode and Defect Analysis and How to Apply It in EATF 16949." Okay, you can check this article later. Now, let's now move into a short example to apply what we've learned so far. Okay, so imagine a common process of handling support tickets. Okay, so the intended result here is to resolve all tickets within 24 hours. Okay, that's our performance goal. Now, what can go wrong? Yeah, we might suddenly get a surge in customer tickets, maybe due to a product defect or a marketing campaign, and response time suffers. Or another risk is losing experienced staff. New team members might take longer, or there could be gaps in knowledge. So on the positive side, we might automate responses to frequent issues using a chatbot. That's an opportunity to improve efficiency. Or and by analyzing ticket content, we might spot trends that help our product team prevent future issues, making the product much more reliable, the product or the service much more reliable. Okay. Now, using flowchart for determining risks in processes. So a handy tool is the flowchart when assessing risks and opportunities among processes. So drawing a flowchart makes it much easier to visualize the flow of activities and what can happen. So first, consider the purpose of the process and the expected result, and then ask, what can go wrong or be improved? So in this case, we have a manufacturing order process. Starts when the production manager gives a production order to a production operator. The production operator starts production and records information in the production order. Then the production order packages the parts and delivers them to the warehouse. Okay, very simple, very basic. Now, you look at the process, you look at the flow chart and ask your team, what can go wrong? Think about it and write your answers in sticky notes. What can go wrong with our intended results? And what undesirable results can come out of this process? So, for example, a breakdown in the manufacturing, in the machine. So you look into this and you start putting the risks in your sticky notes, something like unavailability of raw materials, no worker to operate the machine, power failure, machine breakdown, lousy quality raw materials. So things that can act on the first step, wrong machine settings, produce defective parts, insufficient productivity level, wrong package. Now, these are risks. Okay, so now you evaluate what is critical and define how to avoid or minimize those possible risks. So, for example, you decide that these with the yellow sticky notes are the relevant ones, the significant ones. So you decide to start or improve preventive maintenance and introduce a Kanban system for critical raw materials. You decide to have a formal approval of the first good part. develop a formal quality control plan, develop a formal process control plan, start performing a formal package control, and develop packaging work instructions. Okay, so in your, now, this is, you implement this, and now in your management meetings, keep your risk radar alert, okay? So remember that performance indicators, complaints, and suggestions can be used to update the risk register. We may realize sometimes later that, some months later, that after all, no worker, so we have some problems with not enough workers, so becomes an issue, okay? So that's how, if you look at this is how we can develop from from zero, from scratch, develop a quality plan for our process, okay? Now, 𝗲𝗏𝗏𝗏 asked, how do you assess risk in construction in line with quality assurance and quality control requirements? Okay, so in construction, risk assessment, it's like this, like in this example. So risk assessment under 9001 or ISO 9001 should be embedded in the quality assurance, quality controls, not treated as a separate activity. Okay, so risks are determined like this, and like in this example, by step, by phase, and linked directly to inspection and test plans, to inspections, to testing and approvals, with controls proportionate to their impact on quality and compliance. So this way. And risks are updated through site feedback, such as non-conformity report, changes, and performance results. Now, let's see one way of determining opportunities related with processes, okay? Looking to the purpose or the expected results of a process, okay, is an excellent start to determine risks and opportunities, okay? So consider this example. You have the process purchase resources in the QMS of a manufacturing company. So what are the expected results? What do we want from this particular process? So we want resources are to be obtained at the optimum price within the required quality levels and are received when needed. Okay. So we also want that purchases are to be authorized and within prescribed budgets. Okay. Okay. So now, if you do a brainstorming just based on this, the purpose of this process, on what do you want at the output of, as the main output of this process, you can start thinking, okay, what are the risks? What can go wrong? What can prevent the process from meeting the expected results? Something like overpaying for items purchased, because you have there in the purpose you have optimum price. Poor quality and late deliveries, because in the purpose you have required quality levels and received when needed. Okay. Purchases are to be authorized and within prescribed budget. So vendors selected inappropriately, buying more than it's needed. So you can just by using the brainstorming with a purpose, you can, unqualified or illegal vendors are used. And the same for opportunities. So develop strategic partnership with key suppliers, implement an automated procurement system, collaborate with suppliers on continual quality improvement initiatives. So look into the purpose of your processes and ask what can go wrong, what can be improved. Let me see. I think so there's a question here. Can we somehow connect business contingency planning with process enterprise risks? Yes, yes, Nevena. Yes, we can do that. Yes, of course we can do that. So it's something like this. So we determine the risks, and then the contingency planning is something that we So we determine the risks and we act on two levels, or may act on two levels, okay? We may act something to minimize, to mitigate, to minimize the probability of happening, or to mitigate the consequences of happening, okay? And yeah, in that way, the contingency planning works that way, okay? So yeah, all right. So, oh, I'm too late. I need to, as usual. So I need to, okay, let's see. I think we're almost there. So documenting and evidencing the risk-based thinking. So what does the standard require? The standard doesn't require you to document the risk-based thinking, okay? It is entirely up to you. However, applying risk-based thinking will depend on your chosen technique. So in the case of a small organization, you will probably demonstrate it to the auditor during the interviews when the auditor asks about risks in your industry and your organization and how you deal with them. Okay, so in the case of a bigger and more complex company, you'll probably choose some more complex technique, which will require a procedure to explain how you apply it along with the necessary records. So sometimes acquiring evidence of risk-based thinking approach is more an headache to the auditors than the company itself, okay? Now, look into this picture, okay? Preventive maintenance, the Kanban system, the approval of the first part, the quality and process control plans, the package. So these yellow sticky notes, these are evidence that you are applying the risk-based thinking, okay? So that's why I think that ISO 9001 doesn't require this to be something mandatory, documenting being mandatory, because it's embedded in this part is embedded in your management system. Now, I recommend using a risk register, for example, mainly for those related with the context with achieving or not achieving the quality management objectives. But okay, we can also include this one regarding the processes, for example. Okay. Now, you will find all these risk-related documents in our ISO 9001 Premium Toolkit. Let me show you how it looks like. So this is, let me see here. Okay, so this is the full content of our ISO 9001 Premium Documentation Toolkit. So we have all these documents, so forums, procedures, guidelines, appendixes. So let me show you this too. Procedure for addressing risks and opportunities, and the registry of key risks and opportunities. Okay, so for the procedure, okay, this is a Word document, completely customizable. So you can customize this to your organization. You'll find here some links for articles that can help you with the content. And let me show you just, okay, so you have here the PDCA, identify risks, determine risks, define actions, and then evaluate effectiveness. And then you have for each step, you have here some guidance, okay, that can be used, the procedure. So when planning the QMS, job title. So you can customize this to a particular job in your organization, to a particular role that will do this. Okay, methodology for evaluation. We have here a proposal for evaluating risks and opportunities. Yeah, okay, let me show you this registry. So you see here these you can customize, you can add more things, but yeah, it's like this. Okay, let's so you can see the details of this toolkit here. So I include here the link for the toolkit. Okay. One question. Anjanet asked, ideal reporting for risk management plan. So under ISO 9001, effective risk reporting is concise, decision-focused, and integrated into management information, not a standalone exercise. Okay. So so highlight in a certain way, highlight key risks and opportunities, explain why they matter, show actions only for significant risks, okay? and indicate what are the trends, what are the changes. Now, just, okay, this, based on the questions that I received before this webinar, okay, these are the main challenges with risk management. So, misunderstanding the intent of the standard. So, organizations often confuse risk-based thinking with a formal risk management system, leading to unnecessary tools, leading to register and expectations that are not required by ISO 9001. Lack of proportionality. So there is a tendency to overestimate risks and overanalyze them instead of focusing on what truly affects conformity, performance, and customer satisfaction. Poor integration into everyday processes and leadership decisions. So risk-based thinking is frequently isolated at top management or quality levels, rather than embedded across processes, departments, design, okay, quality assurance, quality control, and the difficulty evidencing risk-based thinking without bureaucracy, okay? Okay, so by taking a risk-based thinking approach, an organization becomes proactive rather than purely reactive. That's the point. That's the reason for this risk-based thinking is becoming proactive, preventing or reducing undesirable effects, and promoting continual improvement. Okay. So to conclude, as you can see, risk-based thinking is a very important part on the road to ISO 9001 compliance. And for that purpose, you can use our toolkit, our 𝗥𝗲𝗴𝗶 9001 toolkit. Here's the link with more details. And I'll also send you now the meeting link to schedule a call with our toolkit expert, okay? So he'll explain you how toolkit works and show you any document you'd like to see, okay? So here's the toolkit expert meeting link, okay? And, okay. So some of you requested some tips about how to implement a QMS. So we in 𝗥𝗲𝗴𝗶 developed a course for all that want to implement a management system for their organizations or as external consultants. The video lectures are free. So you can watch our videos, our courses for free, completely for free, okay? So you have here the links for our course, ISO 9001 Lead Implementer course, and our ISO 9001 Foundations course, the one about the standard. Now, before we begin with the question and answer session, just to mention that you can also ask me anything about ISO 9001 directly. Just send me an email and I'll answer as quick as I can, okay? So if you have to leave before this Q&A session is over, please do fill in the short survey that will open right after you leave the webinar. Now, let's see more questions. Okay, here. Okay. Now, we have here a question from Arvind. Arvind asked, risk management in design part. So I believe it's in regarding clause 9.3. So in ISO 9001, risk management in design is embedded in design and development planning and control. It's not a separated system, okay? So organizations are expected to determine design-related risks and opportunities that could affect the design's ability to meet requirements like customer, statutory, regulatory. So to achieve that, we need to apply appropriate controls and use reviews, verification, validation, and control changes to ensure requirements are met. So that's embedded in your process related with design and development. So emphasis on risk-based thinking, not excessive documentation. Another question is from Victor. So what is the difference between the risk management approach and the preventive action approach? Okay, so in the ISO 9001 2008 version, a preventive action was a separate clause, okay, a separate activity, a separate clause. with the ISO 9001/2015, the risk-based approach is proactive and embedded in everyday planning and operations. So with actions taken in proportion to impact. So the key difference is integration. Preventive action was a clause, while risk-based thinking is a mindset, okay, built into all decisions and processes. I leave here a link that can be useful. Risk-based thinking replacing preventive action in ISO 9001. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So complete guide to correct, and another one is complete guide to corrective action versus preventive action. So we have here another question. No more questions. Oh, are there significant changes in risk management between 9001/2015 and so the future ISO 9001/2026? So I didn't see yet the final draft international standard, but I saw the draft international standard. So there may be difference until the end, but okay. Now, basically, there will be no differences. What they did in the standard is that they now have different clauses for risks and for opportunities. Okay, they want to stress. I think they want to stress the importance of opportunities. Many companies only think about risks, and they want to provide that more information. Okay, about that organizations invest more time about determining opportunities. Okay. So one question that I received was from Nilar, and Nilar asked, for university, which risks are important about climate change? Okay, so from an ISO 9001 perspective, a university should focus on climate-related risks that can affect its ability to consistently provide education, research, and services. So we can think that key risks include operational continuity risks, so things that like extreme weather disrupting teaching, exams, laboratories, IT systems, or the access to the campus. Infrastructure risks, like buildings, energy systems, and laboratories not resilient to heat waves, to flooding, or water scarcity. Human risks like health, safety, and well-being of students, staff, and researchers under changing climate conditions. Academic and reputational risks, so programs and research becoming misaligned with societal, regulatory, and funding expectations on climate and sustainability. And financial risks, so increased operating costs like energy, maintenance, insurance, and loss of funding linked to sustainability performance. So applying risk-based thinking means anticipating these impacts, integrating them into planning and design of services, and adapting processes so the university remains effective, credible, and resilient in a changing climate. Okay. Now, I leave here the link for the article, Climate Action Changes Amendment in ISO Standards. Okay. So I think we don't have any more questions. All right. So no more questions. So let's wrap up. Okay. So I think I've covered all your questions. So let's wrap up the webinar. Just a few words before we finish. So as I mentioned, this 1-hour webinar was intended to give you an overview, a general view of the ISO 9001 risk management. I hope I could give you some useful hints. You can ask me anything about ISO 9001 directly by email. You can also download this presentation deck from our website, or take a look at video tutorials and documentation templates. We'll send you the email with all the necessary links, okay? Finally, if you join this webinar through Zoom, you'll see a short survey, so I would kindly ask you to spend a minute to fill it in. The recording of this presentation will be available in a few hours. you will receive a link to the recording. Janet, I will send you an answer by email, okay? After the webinar, okay? So if you join the webinar through LinkedIn and YouTube, you will receive a link to the short server now, and the link to the presentation will be posted to our event page in a few minutes. That will be all. Thank you for participating, and I hope you enjoyed this webinar. Have a nice day.